A Guardian's Call. The crystalline spires of the Stellaran Imperial Palace pierced the lavender sky like frozen starlight. Inside, Princess Neraya sat motionless in her hover chair, her opalescent skin reflecting the soft ambient light. Her unseeing eyes, clouds of shifting silver, gazed into the middle distance as another potential guardian hurriedly made their excuses and departed. "That makes 17, she murmured to her aunt, Regent Fenna. "Perhaps we should simply accept that no one wishes to guard a blind princess." Fenna's sympathetic sigh echoed through the chamber. "The position requires more than just combat skills, dear one. Your guardian must also be your companion, your confidant. These applicants lack the patience, the understanding, the stomach for dealing with a damaged royal." Neraya's voice held no bitterness, only weary acceptance. "You are not damaged," Fenna replied firmly. "You are different. And perhaps what we need is someone different as well." That's how James Harrison found himself standing before the Stellaran High Council 3 days later, his worn combat medic uniform a stark contrast to the flowing crystalline robes of the alien nobility. 10 years in Earth's interstellar medical corps had taught him to stay calm under pressure, but even he felt a flutter of nervousness as Regent Fenna's piercing gaze assessed him. "Your credentials are unusual, Mr. Harrison," she stated. "Combat experience, yet primarily focused on healing. Tell me, why would a human wish to serve as guardian to a Stellaran princess?" James's response was measured, honest. "Because everyone deserves someone in their corner, Your Grace. My time in the Corps showed me that healing isn't just about fixing physical problems. It's about being present, being patient, and helping someone find their own strength." A soft sound drew his attention. Princess Neraya had entered silently, her hover chair gliding gracefully across the polished floor. James's medical training noted the subtle signs of her condition. The slight tension in her shoulders, the way her hands gripped the chair's controls with practiced precision. "You speak of strength," Neraya said, her voice carrying unexpected warmth. "Yet you seek to guard someone who cannot see her attackers, who cannot walk without assistance. Why?" "With respect, Your Highness, I've learned that traditional measures of strength are often misleading. In my experience, true strength comes in many forms." For the first time, a genuine smile graced Neraya's features. "And what forms of strength do you see in me, Mr. Harrison?" "I see someone who faces every day with courage, who hasn't let others' preconceptions define her. That's the kind of strength that matters." He paused, then added, "And I suspect there's much more to discover, if given the chance." The princess's silver eyes seemed to focus on him with uncanny precision. "Most potential guardians treat me like fragile crystal, ready to shatter at the slightest touch. You speak to me as a person. Because that's who you are, Your Highness. The hover chair, the blindness, they're part of your story, but they don't define you." A moment of silence filled the chamber. Then Neraya turned to her aunt. "Him," she said simply. "I choose him." Later that evening, as James familiarized himself with the palace's security systems, Neraya approached quietly. "You should know," she said, "that this position has broken stronger souls than yours. The court can be cruel to those they see as outsiders." "Good thing I'm not here for the court then," James replied, continuing his work. "I'm here for you." "Why?" The question held genuine curiosity. James thought for a moment. "Because everyone deserves a chance to show the world who they really are. Sometimes, they just need someone to watch their back while they do it." Neraya's expression softened. "And you believe you can handle whatever challenges that might bring." "I believe we'll handle them together, Your Highness." He smiled. After all, that's what partners do. As the twin suns set outside, casting rainbow refractions through the crystal palace walls, neither human nor princess could have guessed how prophetic those words would prove to be, or how their unlikely partnership would soon shake the foundations of two civilizations. Defying expectations, the first assassination attempt came 3 weeks into James's service. Not with plasma weapons or poison, but with words sharp as crystal shards at the Imperial Court's monthly gathering. Such a pity, Lord Daxon drawled, his voice carrying across the crystalline Great Hall, that our beloved princess must rely on a primitive species for protection. One wonders what other standards the palace has lowered. James maintained his position near Nerea's hover chair, face impassive. He'd learned quickly that reactions were what these nobles craved. Beside him, Nerea's posture remained perfectly composed, though her fingers tightened almost imperceptibly on her chair's controls. "Tell me, human," Daxon continued, emboldened by his audience's titters, "do you find it challenging to serve someone so limited?" Before James could respond, Nerea's voice cut through the tension like a laser. "Lord Daxon, I wasn't aware you had returned from the outer colonies. Tell me, how fares your mining operation on Cathera Prime? I understand the indigenous population has some concerns about your methods." The color drained from Daxon's face. "Your Highness, that is curious, isn't it?" Nerea continued smoothly. "How one can see so much without traditional vision. The court communications network is quite informative, especially when one has learned to listen properly." Later, in the privacy of Nerea's personal gardens, James couldn't contain his curiosity. "How did you know about his mining operation?" Nerea's hover chair drifted between the bioluminescent flowers, their glow reflecting off her opalescent skin. "The palace systems are all connected through crystalline technology. Being unable to see forced me to develop other ways of perceiving." She gestured, and the nearby crystal formations hummed in response. "Most Stellarans use tech interfaces visually. I had to learn to feel the energy patterns, the data flows. It's like hearing a symphony where others only see sheet music." James watched in fascination as the crystals pulsed in harmony with her movements. "You can access the entire palace network this way." "More than that." A mischievous smile played at her lips. "I can feel the emotions in the energy patterns. Fear, deception, ambition. They all leave distinct signatures." Lord Daxon's panic when I mentioned Cathera Prime was illuminating. "That's incredible," James breathed. "Have you told anyone else about this ability?" Her expression sobered. "Only my aunt knows the full extent. The court already sees me as damaged, James. If they knew I could sense their secrets." She trailed off meaningfully. "They'd see you as a threat," he finished. "No wonder you needed a guardian who'd look past the obvious." Their conversation was interrupted by an urgent chime from Nerea's communications crystal. "Princess," Regent Fenna's voice was tense. "The Nexari delegation has arrived early. They're requesting an immediate audience." James noticed Nerea's subtle flinch at the news. "The Nexari," he said carefully. "They're the ones who developed the weapon that caused my condition." Nerea's voice was tight. "Yes, though officially it was a tragic accident during a peace delegation." Her silver eyes turned toward him. "Ready to earn your keep, Guardian." The Nexari ambassador, Krelthor, cut an imposing figure in the throne room. His exoskeleton gleamed with embedded tech, and his multifaceted eyes fixed unnervingly on Nerea. "Princess, how gratifying to see you in good health." James didn't miss the slight emphasis on "see" or the way Nerea's energy signature rippled through nearby crystals. He stepped closer to her chair, a silent reminder of his presence. "Ambassador," Nerea acknowledged coolly. "I trust you bring word from your collective." "Indeed." Krelthor's mandibles clicked in what might have been amusement. "We are most interested in discussing closer relations between our peoples, particularly regarding your unique condition." "My condition is not up for discussion," Nerea stated firmly. "But surely you desire healing." The ambassador pressed. "Our scientists have made remarkable advances. With proper study of your neural patterns, we might." "The princess has declined," James interrupted, earning shocked looks from the Stellaran courtiers. A human daring to speak in formal proceedings was unprecedented. Krelthor's head swiveled toward him. "And what would a human know of such matters?" I know that true healing doesn't come from those who caused the wound in the first place, James replied evenly. The ambassador's exoskeleton bristled with barely contained rage. You dare. He dares because I allow it. Nereia cut in, her voice ringing with authority. My guardian speaks with my voice in this matter, Ambassador. And my answer is no. As the Nexari delegation departed, their anger palpable in the crystal energy signatures, James noticed something odd. The patterns around Krelthor didn't match his displayed emotion. Instead of rage, they pulsed with satisfaction. That evening, as James ran security checks on Nereia's quarters, she was unusually quiet. Credit for your thoughts, he prompted gently. The Nexari, she said finally. Their energy patterns were wrong. They're planning something. I noticed that too, James admitted, though not as clearly as you did. Nereia turned toward him, surprise evident in her expression. You can sense the patterns. Not like you can, he said quickly, but spending time around you, I've started to notice. Echoes, I guess. Little harmonies in the crystal tech. A slow smile spread across her face. James Harrison, you continue to defy expectations. She paused thoughtfully. Perhaps that's why they fear you. They fear me. I'm just a human medic playing guardian. You're a human who's learning to understand Stellaran technology in ways even we don't fully grasp, she corrected. And more importantly, you're someone who sees me as I am, not as what they tried to make me. The weight of unspoken possibilities hung between them. Finally, James asked, what do we do about the Nexari? For now. Nereia's fingers danced across her chair's controls, sending ripples of energy through the crystal network. We watch, we listen, and we prepare for whatever they're planning. As if in response to her words, the crystal formations throughout the palace hummed with quiet energy, a symphony only they could truly hear. Something was coming. They both felt it. But facing it together, they might just redefine what was possible for both their species. Hidden truths. The attack came at midnight, when the palace's crystal spires reflected starlight like frozen fire. James was reviewing security protocols in Nereia's outer chamber when he felt it. A discordant note in the crystal harmonies he'd grown attuned to over the past months. Nereia, he called sharply, already moving toward her bedroom door. Something's wrong with the network. Her voice carried equal urgency. They're trying to override the environmental controls. James burst through the door as the air began to shimmer with harmful particles. Nereia was already directing her hover chair toward him, one hand pressed to her temple as she fought against the intrusion in the crystal systems. Can't maintain containment, she gasped. They've locked me out of primary controls. Without hesitation, James scooped her from the chair. Then we do this the human way. Hold tight. They barely cleared the room before the air crystallized behind them, turning the chamber into a deadly garden of razor-sharp formations. James's combat training took over as he carried Nereia through the corridors, dodging security drones that had been turned against them. The sanctuary, Nereia directed, her arms tight around his neck. Underground chamber, old tech they can't access. Following her directions, James found the hidden entrance just as palace guards rounded the corner, weapons raised. Halt, their commander ordered. By order of Lord Daxon, the princess is to be secured for her own protection. Daxon, James growled. Since when does he command palace security? Since the regent was found unconscious in her chambers, the commander replied, apparently poisoned by her human attendant. Nereia's grip on James tightened. Aunt Fenna, James, they're lying. I can feel their deception in the crystal resonance. Surrender the princess, the commander demanded, advancing slowly. James felt Nereia's breath against his ear as she whispered, trust me. Then louder, guardian, put me down. Your Highness. Now, James. He complied reluctantly, keeping one hand on her shoulder. Nereia stood unsteadily, facing the guards with regal poise, despite her obvious physical discomfort. Commander, She addressed the lead guard. You served my father faithfully for 15 years. Do you truly believe my aunt would be so easily poisoned? That my guardian would betray us? The commander hesitated. In that moment, Naraya's hands flew up, and the crystal formations in the walls pulsed with blinding light. The guard staggered, temporarily blinded, as James swept Naraya back into his arms and ducked through the sanctuary entrance. The ancient chamber hummed with different energies than the modern palace above. Crystalline technology, yes, but rawer, more primal. Naraya directed James to set her down near a central pillar. They can't access these systems, she explained, running her hands over the crystal surface. This chamber predates the modern network. It's tied directly to the royal bloodline. Your Highness, a new voice echoed through the chamber. Both James and Naraya turned toward a holographic figure emerging from the crystals, an elderly Stellaran woman in ancient robes. I am Keeper Sylvana, the figure announced, first sage of the crystal throne. I have waited long for one who could awaken these systems. First sage, James questioned, but that was thousands of years ago. An echo, Naraya breathed, a crystal memory preserved in the old tech. Her unseeing eyes seemed to focus on the figure. Why have you waited for me? Because you see as the ancients did, Sylvana replied. Your blindness is not a weakness, it is an awakening. The Nexari weapon did not damage you, child. It triggered dormant abilities within your bloodline. The revelation hung in the air as pieces began falling into place. The Nexari, James said slowly. They didn't want to heal you. They wanted to study how you survived their weapon. More than survived, Sylvana corrected. She evolved. The ability to perceive crystal energies directly, to commune with the network through pure sensation. These were traits of the original Stellaran rulers, before reliance on visual interfaces dulled our connection to the crystals. Naraya's hands trembled against the central pillar. Then my condition is your greatest strength, James finished, moving to support her. That's why Daxon and the Nexari moved now. They realized what you were becoming. They fear what you represent, Sylvana agreed. The return of abilities they thought lost to time. But you are not alone, child. Your human guardian, his ability to sense the crystal harmonies proves what we ancient ones always knew. That true power comes not from isolation, but connection. The chamber rumbled as explosions sounded from above. They're trying to breach the sanctuary, James reported, checking his weapons. Let them try, Naraya said, her voice carrying new confidence. Her hands splayed across the crystal pillar, and the entire chamber began to pulse with energy. I understand now. Everything I thought was weakness was preparing me for this moment. What do you need from me? James asked, standing ready at her side. Naraya smiled, her silver eyes glowing with crystal energy. What you've always given me. Partnership. They thought making me blind would make me helpless. Instead, it taught me to see in ways they couldn't imagine. And you, by accepting me as I am, learned to see it too. The sanctuary's crystals hummed in harmony with her words, power building as their pursuers drew closer. James felt the resonance singing in his blood, a connection between human intuition and Stellaran technology that shouldn't have been possible. Together then, he asked, placing his hand over hers on the crystal pillar. Together, she agreed. Let's show them what true vision looks like. As the sanctuary doors began to crack, ancient power and modern determination merged into something entirely new. The era of forced limitations and artificial boundaries was about to end, and neither human nor Stellaran would ever be the same. Rising power. The sanctuary's ancient crystals pulsed with power as Naraya and James faced the imminent breach of their sanctuary. Through the crystal network, they could sense their enemy's approach. Daxon's corrupted palace guards, Nexari specialists, and something else, something that made the crystals shiver with discordant energy. They'd brought a crystal breaker, Naraya announced, her fingers dancing across the control pillar. necessary technology designed to shatter our crystal matrices. James felt the wrongness of it through their shared connection to the ancient systems. Can they destroy this sanctuary? They can try. Neraya's silver eyes blazed with crystal energy, but they don't understand what they're dealing with. Keeper Sylvana, show us the truth of the crystal throne. The holographic figure of the ancient sage shimmered into view. The crystal throne was never meant to be a seat of power, she explained. It was a focusing point, a place where ruler and realm could become one. The Nexari didn't cripple you, child. They awakened what your ancestors always meant for you to become. The sanctuary doors groaned under another assault. James positioned himself between Neraya and the entrance, though he knew traditional weapons would mean little in the coming confrontation. How do we fight them? Not fight, Neraya corrected. Transform. Her hands pressed deeper into the crystal pillar. The ancient Stellarans didn't rule through force, but through harmony. Watch. The crystal matrices throughout the sanctuary began to shift, responding to her touch in ways James had never seen. The very structure of the chamber seemed to flow like liquid light, reorganizing itself at a molecular level. Impossible. Lord Daxon's voice carried through the cracking door. No one has managed direct crystal manipulation since the First Age. Because they were too focused on seeing to understand true vision, Neraya called back. She turned her face toward James. Help me show them. He placed his hands beside hers on the pillar without hesitation. The connection that had been growing between them over months of partnership suddenly blazed into full awareness. James gasped as his consciousness expanded through the crystal network, experiencing the palace as Neraya did, not as structures and spaces, but as flows of energy and intention. The doors finally burst inward. Daxon strode through flanked by Nexari soldiers, their crystal breaker humming with malevolent purpose. Stand down, princess, he commanded. The time for obsolete traditions is over. The Nexari can give our people real power, not these mystical connections to crystals. You mean they can give you power, Neraya corrected, in exchange for helping them study and replicate what they accidentally created in me. Tell me, Lord Daxon, did you ever wonder why they chose that particular weapon during the peace delegation? The Nexari commander stepped forward, mandibles clicking. We recognize the potential in your genetic structure. The weapon was calibrated specifically to activate dormant traits while appearing to cause disability. Your blindness was meant to make you dependent on us for healing. Instead, it set me free. Neraya's voice carried ancient authority. James, do you remember what you first said to me? About true strength coming in many forms. He smiled, understanding flowing between them through their joined connection to the crystals. I think I'm about to see a remarkable demonstration of that. The crystal breaker powered up, its discordant frequencies making the sanctuary's structures groan. But instead of shattering, the crystals began to sing. The harmony that Neraya and James had discovered together spread through the network, transforming the weapon's destructive energy into something new. No, Daxon shouted as the crystal breaker's housing began to crystallize, its technology being absorbed and reformed by the ancient systems. The Nexari promised me power. They promised you an illusion, Neraya stated. The same illusion that's gripped our people for generations. That power comes from control rather than connection. Her unseeing eyes swept the chamber. Watch closely, all of you. This is what true vision looks like. The sanctuary erupted with crystalline light as Neraya and James channeled their combined strength through the ancient systems. The crystal matrices that formed the palace's foundation began to pulse in harmony with their shared consciousness. Where the Nexari sought to shatter, they in vase created connections. Where Daxon tried to impose control, they offered understanding. Through their bond, James felt Neraya's joy as she finally embraced her true nature, not as a disabled princess needing protection, but as a bridge between past and future, between species and civilizations. His human intuition and adaptability merged with her innate connection to the crystals, creating something neither civilization had imagined possible. The Nexari soldiers found their weapons transforming in their hands, the crystal components responding to a deeper resonance than their artificial controls could maintain. Lord Daxon fell to his knees as the crystal networks he'd tried to corrupt restored themselves, laying bare his schemes and betrayals. "The age of separation is ending," Neraya declared, her voice carrying both power and compassion. "We stand at a crossroads between isolation and connection, between fear and understanding." She turned her radiant face toward James. "My guardian showed me that strength lies not in overcoming differences, but in embracing them. Now we offer that same choice to all." The crystal light reached its peak, and in that moment of transformation, both human and Stellaran witnessed the birth of something extraordinary, a fusion of technologies and perspectives that would reshape both their civilizations. The true power of the Crystal Throne was never about ruling over others, but about creating bridges where others saw only walls. And at the heart of this revolution stood an unlikely pair, a blind princess who had learned to see with her heart, and a human guardian who had learned to see through her eyes. Together, they were about to rewrite the future of both their peoples. Dawn of Unity. 1 month after the confrontation in the sanctuary, the Stellaran Imperial Palace had transformed. The crystal spires no longer simply reflected light. They sang with it, resonating with harmonies that both humans and Stellarans could feel. In the newly christened Hall of Unity, Princess Neraya stood unaided before representatives from both worlds, her silver eyes bright with purpose. "The crystals were never meant to be merely tools," she explained, her voice carrying to every corner of the vast chamber. "They were meant to be bridges, between people, between species, between different ways of seeing." James watched from nearby, still adjusting to the changes their shared revelation had sparked. The bond they'd forged in the sanctuary had spread, teaching others to sense the crystal harmonies. Already, human scientists and Stellaran crystal masters were discovering new possibilities in their combined perspectives. Regent Fenna, fully recovered from Daxon's attempt on her life, stepped forward. The ancient prophecies spoke of a time when the barriers between worlds would dissolve. We thought it meant conquest or catastrophe. Instead, it meant understanding. In the weeks following the sanctuary incident, the full scope of the Nexari plot had come to light. Their weapon, designed to trigger dormant Stellaran abilities, had succeeded beyond their expectations, but not in the way they'd intended. Instead of creating a subject for study, they'd awakened a catalyst for change. "The Nexari believed disability would make me weak," Neraya addressed the assembly. "They assumed blindness would limit my understanding of our crystal technology. But true vision has nothing to do with eyes." She turned toward James, smiling. "My guardian taught me that strength comes not from overcoming differences, but from embracing them. In doing so, he helped me discover what our ancestors always knew, that the greatest power comes from connection." The crystal matrices throughout the palace hummed in harmony with her words. James felt the resonance in his bones, a reminder of how much had changed. Human adaptation and Stellaran crystal technology had merged in ways neither species had imagined possible. "The old court saw my condition as a weakness to be hidden," Neraya continued. "The Nexari saw it as a weapon to be exploited. But what they created was a bridge, proof that different ways of perceiving the world aren't flaws to be corrected, but gifts to be shared." She gestured, and the crystal formations around the hall shifted, creating stunning displays of light and energy that everyone, regardless of species or ability, could experience in their own way. This is the true legacy of the Crystal Throne. Not domination, but harmony. Not uniformity, but celebration of our unique perspectives. Lord Daxon and his conspirators had been tried and sentenced, their crimes laid bare by the very crystal networks they tried to corrupt. The Nexari Collective, faced with the failure of their plans and the success of what they'd inadvertently created, had withdrawn to reconsider their place in the changing galaxy. "As your princess," Neraya declared, "I once thought my role was to overcome my limitations. Now I understand that what others saw as limitations were actually opportunities. Chances to discover new ways of connecting, new paths to understanding. She extended her hand, and James stepped forward to take it. The crystal harmony surged around them, a tangible manifestation of their unique bond. Human adaptability and stellar and crystal sensitivity had combined to create something entirely new, a model for what their species could achieve together. The future we face is not one of separation, Nerea concluded, but of synthesis. Not of overcoming our differences, but of celebrating how those very differences make us stronger together. Later, in the privacy of the palace gardens, James and Nerea stood among the bioluminescent flowers that had witnessed the beginning of their journey. The crystals sang softly around them, a melody of possibility and promise. "Did you ever imagine," Nerea asked, her fingers intertwined with his, "when you first stepped into that throne room, that we'd end up here?" James smiled, feeling the pulse of crystal energy that flowed between them. "I knew you were extraordinary from the first moment. Though I admit, reshaping two civilizations wasn't exactly what I had in mind when I signed up as your guardian." "Guardian, partner, catalyst for interstellar change," she teased. "You've certainly exceeded your job description." Her expression softened. "Thank you, James, not just for protecting me, but for seeing me, truly seeing me, when everyone else was blinded by what they thought they knew." "You're the one who taught us all to see differently," he replied. "I just had the good fortune to learn that lesson first." Above them, the crystal spires of the palace gleamed with new purpose, their light a beacon for the age of unity dawning across the stars. The blind princess and her human guardian had discovered that true vision comes not from eyes alone, but from the heart's ability to see past surface differences to the harmony that connects all things. In the end, it wasn't about overcoming limitations or fixing what others saw as flaws. It was about understanding that every different way of experiencing the world adds another note to the universal symphony. And in that growing harmony, both human and stellar had found something profound. Not just partnership or protection, but the kind of connection that transforms worlds. The crystal songs echoed through the garden, carrying their message to all who could hear. In our differences lies our strength, in our connections lies our power, and in our willingness to see through each other's eyes lies the key to unlocking the extraordinary potential that exists in us all.